I bought a Meineke discount muffler franchise because the economics were great. I mean, you could make as much as a McDonald's if you did it right, and the investment, it was highly leverageable. And so I did that. We opened one up the first day of class, second year. By the time I graduated, I had 3 stores. I was making more money than I could make as an attorney.
This is Dennis Consorte with Snackable Solutions, and I am here with Jim Muehlhausen. Jim, did I get your name right?
You did. Thank you.
That is amazing. That was my first shot.
I've learned not to get offended. It's just not worth it anymore.
It really isn't. I actually pronounce my last name a couple of different ways depending on how I feel that day. As long as you don't call me consort, I'm happy. Now, one thing I noticed on your LinkedIn, you went to IU Bloomington. I actually spent a couple years at Purdue, but I did visit the IU campus, and it was beautiful. This was 20 some odd years ago. What was college like for you?
Well, I went to a small school called Valparaiso University up in Northwest Indiana, accounting degree. I've always been a business guy, so accounting degree, and I decided I didn't want to be an accountant. So what do you do when you've been trained to be an accountant? Well, you go to law school down at IU. So did that, but I started a business after my first year of law school and never looked back.
So walk me through that. What made you decide, you know what, this career as a lawyer isn't for me. I need to go the entrepreneurial route.
So I was always good at math. So when you're good at math, you study accounting. If you want to be in business and you're good at math, you become an accountant. And then you realize that accounting really isn't about numbers. It's a framework to tell the history of a business is what it really is, which is fine. I enjoyed accounting school, but I enjoyed business more than I enjoy accounting. And when I went to law school, I just wasn't into it. It just is not my thing. And I think I'm more of a big picture, non-detailed guy. I don't know if you're a disc profile person, but if you looked at my disc profile, and it has changed over the years as I've given myself permission to not worry about details as much. But even back the very first one I ever took, if you looked at this, you would say, this dude should not be an accountant or a lawyer. That's what you would say. You would be like, do not hire this guy to be a lawyer or an accountant. His personality is the exact opposite of what you would want for that position. And I'm sure that was what was going on behind the scenes in my head, and all the turmoil that I was feeling was that I just really wasn't wired to do that, which led me to a saying that I tell my clients many times: just because you can doesn't mean you should. I mean, just because I could pass the bar, pass the CPA, does not mean I should be one. And you see lots and lots of business owners that are doing all kinds of work that they can do, but there's probably something better that they could do. And a lot of times they don't like it, right? We like what we're good at. And so there's nobody else to do it. So I do it, and I can do it, and I do it competently, and it makes the company money. And so then they get trapped into that work that they're not enjoying and is below their highest and best use.
So you've had a number of different businesses. Tell me about your first one. What was that like? And what inspired you to get into it?
My first business, what do you do? After a semester of law school, I realized I wasn't going to do that. And I didn't have the guts to quit. I finished, I took the bar, I passed the bar, all that stuff. But I had a business that was running 2 of those 3 years. And so I said, well, let's look at a franchise. And I didn't have much money. And so I'm looking at, I wanted to buy a Taco Bell. There was only one Taco Bell in Bloomington. There's like 5 now. And I thought, well, that would be a good one. And it was like $250,000. And that was like, well, so much for that. Can't do that. And so what do you do with this tiny pile of money? Well, you go find a friend to give you a little bit more so you can bump it up. And you start looking that you can buy mailboxes, et cetera, or some very kind of low end, something I know I didn't want to do. And so despite not knowing anything about cars, nor being a car guy, nor being mechanically inclined, I bought a Meineke discount muffler franchise because the economics were great. I mean, you could make as much as a McDonald's if you did it right. And the investment, it was highly leverageable. And so I did that. We opened one up the first day of class, second year. By the time I graduated, I had 3 stores. I was making more money than I could make as an attorney. I never really tried to be an attorney. And then I went from that business to another, to another, to another. And I've just been a serial entrepreneur my whole life.
So let's talk about Meineke for a moment. What did you like most about that experience? And was there anything that you would have done differently as far as starting with a franchise?
If I would have done it differently, I never would have sold them. I didn't know about HalfRetire when I was 27 years old, but I wish that I would have, because we sold them for what a lot of businesses sell for, 3 times earnings. And that was a lot of money to a 27-year-old. But I would have been far wealthier if I would have figured out a way for that business to be converted to ownership income versus the hardworking income that I had with it. And realistically, if I could give 27-year-old Jim a message, I would say, I think business owners have this thing about maximizing income, right? It's why sometimes they get cheap. It's a fairly rare business owner that will go, oh yeah, we need to go spend $10,000 a month on a marketing program because it's a great investment in the business. Man, that feels like it's coming straight out of your pocket, and it's a $10,000 a month pay cut is what that feels like, even if it is the right business move. You see it all the time. To me, it's the rare business owner that will take money out of their pocket to invest in the business. And I was one of them. And so if you say, okay, my partner and I might have been making $150,000 a year from this thing, why don't we take a $75,000 pay cut and take a $75,000 income stream from the business forever, was a way better deal than what we sold the business for. But we didn't want to do it anymore. We were young. The future was all in front of us. And so we took the money and got out of the business because we just didn't want to do it anymore. It was a fun hobby in law school. I don't know that I wanted to do it time.
Now, I do want to get into HalfRetire, but before we do that, I want to explore a little bit more of your history. And many entrepreneurs go through a burnout phase or something that just makes something click in their minds before they get to the next or last leg of their journey. Was there a period like that for you?
Oh, sure. I think everybody has those periods. I probably had more than one. Probably had more than one. I've been at this a long time.
Tell me about the most impactful.
The most impactful period where I was, having, doubts about it.
Yes.
I think the hardest time for me was, so I started a manufacturing company that I ran for 9 years. And it was in the automotive business, and it got to be a tough slog. And I did something that I wish my clients would do. I said to myself, okay, I should be doing better than this. I think a lot of people feel that way. I should be doing better than I'm doing. And I definitely had felt that way for a while. And in retrospect, it was the stinking industry. I mean, I watched competitors drop like flies, and we continued to grow, but we never were killing it, because if I would have been a SaaS software company, I probably would have taken that hard work and gotten a lot more benefit from it. I wrote a book on business models, and one of the sayings that I like from that book is, hard work applied to a bad business model just yields more hard work. And I was there a little bit. It wasn't a bad business model, but it was way tougher than something else. And so in the late 90s, I told myself, you know what, I'm going to give it one more year. I'm going to go all out. And if I can't get to X, and I do mean X, I'm kind of a gray guy, not a black and white guy. None of this almost, I got it, right? I hit this number. That's what I think I should be earning, what we should be growing, that this is worth continuing the fairly, tough slog that we were going through. And I had young kids. They were both under 5. And I was like, I need to be doing better. And I did not hit the number. I came close. I did not hit the number, and I sold it. And I had to sell it in pieces. No one wanted to buy it because we had these 2 disparate units that worked for us, and I had to sell one to another. I mean, it was very complex, the way that I exited that business. And after 9 years of a hard fight, I didn't know what I wanted to do next, other than I knew I didn't want to work for somebody else, but I did. I did.
So what was it that inspired you to do your next thing? Tell me about that.
Well, hating my job a tremendous amount. It's hard when you've been running things to start taking orders, especially ones that you would disagree with. And I try not to be more of a pain in the butt than normal. But when you're used to calling the shots and you have the capabilities, and now you're 3 rungs below the top, and they really don't want your input, it was difficult. And
so if I understand this right, after that venture, you went back to sort of an employee role?
I never had an employee role other than as a kid. I mean, we owned a spring business that was pretty large, and I was very fortunate to, get to work in that business from the time I was, 12 or 13 years old, doing work that you shouldn't put a 14-year-old on the phone with vendors getting quotes for plating, but they did, because I was gutsy enough or brazen enough to do it. I would do anything nobody else wanted to do, and there was plenty of it. And so I got to do everything from program a Wang computer for job costing when I was 16 to doing a bunch of stuff that most people never get the opportunity to long before I ever went to business school. And so growing up with a business, being in business, the thought of working for somebody else wasn't real appealing, but I knew I didn't know what I wanted to do. And so I'll give myself credit for being smart enough not to force it. And so I took a year, and it probably only took 6 months. And then I went into effectively one of the businesses that I'm still in today. We've, added other business units since then, but since 2000, I've been in the same business.
And what's that business?
That business is basically masterminds for business owners. So we'll call it business coaching and consulting plus a mastermind component. I participated in a mastermind group. It was fantastic. It really was one of the best business moves I ever made. And so I went into that business because I really feel like all business owners should be participating in something akin to a mastermind group.
So who would benefit from joining CEO Focus, and what would they get out of it?
It takes a certain kind of person, right? Because I see a lot of business owners that when it really comes down to it, they don't want outside input. They'd much rather just not be told that, sure, they want things to be better, right? Sure, they want improvement, and they'll Google stuff or they'll read an article and they'll do this. But when it really comes down to, you don't get radical change without doing radical things. Oh, I want to double my sales, but I won't want to do anything differently. That's not going to happen. Let me tell you what's going to happen. You're going to get incremental change. People that want significantly different results need to do things significantly differently. And 10 or 20% of the business owners are prepared to do that. And so what participation in a peer group does to me is, number one, gives you fresh eyes on things. It's hard to see what's going on. And just like it's hard to put on makeup or tie a tie without a mirror, it's hard to see your own business because you are in it. From the outside looking in is different than from the inside looking out. So you're going to get access to best practices from other businesses and other people that think differently than you. You're going to be challenged on the way you think about things. And sometimes that leads, I got people that participating in a peer group has changed their life. Never would have been able to sell their business, sold their business for a ton of money, couldn't get unstuck. They were stuck. And some of it can be the way you think about things, the way you see things, unwillingness to do hard stuff. Fire your brother is not fun. But if that's what's holding your business back, how many people, I don't know if you bumped into it, but I can start naming names of 10 or 15 people that have someone in their business that is holding it back that they won't get rid of. And you know why they won't get rid of it? Because they don't have a dozen people bugging them every month. How come Bob still works there? And that's the difference. And it's not always fun. But you know what is fun? Breaking free and getting the results that you should be getting, but without fresh eyes, fresh minds, other best practices, someone to give you a kick in the butt when you need it, true accountability. I'm guessing you're like most hard drivers and you think that you hold yourself accountable. And I disagree. I think you're trying hard. I think you're driven. I think you put a lot into it. But accountability comes from other people, not from yourself. And so if you really want accountability, you have to get others involved. And most people don't have that.
That's really interesting. I think there's a lot of truth to that. So if I were to go to ceofocus.com, there's a quiz on the homepage. If I took that quiz, what would I learn?
I think we call that your freedom factor. How much freedom does your business provide? And certainly that ties into the HalfRetire message as well. And I think that there's a lot of business owners, and size is some of it. It's difficult to be a couple $1 million business because you lack scale. It's the curse of small business is scale. How many bookkeepers do you need? 0.4. How many assemblers do you need? 3.8. You need fractional help in everything. A big business needs 999 people answering the phone, not 9.9 or 9.3. And having all these fractional jobs is the curse of small business. And when you're small, you have more of that than if you're 2 million versus 20, you're going to have less fractional need, and it just makes life simpler. I think people think it's, I'll have people to delegate to. I don't think so. I think it's just fractional problem of how do you meet all these, and the owner ends up filling those fractional roles a lot of times, or pieces of them.
Is there some advice you would give to, because this is our audience, is there some advice you would give to those small business owners in terms of getting the right fractional help that they need?
Well, that could be tricky. I'm going to come at it from a different angle. Okay. So we teach this technique called fractional. So, for instance, one of the examples that resonates with people is changing a light bulb. Changing a light bulb is 18 steps, not one. And the way that most people delegate is they say, Dennis, go change the light bulb. And then we've all had experiences where you tell the person to do something a little more complicated than change the light bulb, and then they screw it up and it makes it worse. And then you go, it's easier to do it myself and all of that. And then you get trapped with that work. When you fractionally delegate something, what you do is you break it into those 18 pieces and you find what we call your Picasso work, the work that really does require you, the work you can't delegate. And then if you keep that, it ends up being a fraction of the work. And then you can break free of some of this work. And for a couple $1 million business or a $5 million business, this is magic. The way that you get at that is, I think you start paying attention to what you do and how much it's actually worth. So if I'm having to deal with some accounting issue, you go, how much time do I spend doing that in a given month? And if I'm spending, say, 5 hours a month in accounting, you can probably get rid of 4 of those 5 hours, maybe even all of them. But step one to me is stop thinking of something as a whole. It's pieces. It's not Jim's doing accounting work. It's Jim's doing 20 things that equal accounting work. How many of those 20 should I and could I not be doing, right? There's lots of great offshore help. There's all kinds of places that you can find talent that can help you. Not to mention, you can eliminate. I've taught a lot of clients how to stop sending invoices. You want to have more time? Stop doing it. Whether it be firing bad customers or small customers or changing how your process works, or we use a lot of technology. I like getting a good technology stack, which is very foreign to a lot of businesses, to automate. But I know in our business, we have a technology stack that replaces about 4 people. And we have 4 less people running around because it's replaced by a technology stack that works 24 hours a day, never calls in sick, doesn't complain, etc. And it provides us leverage. And then it provides me the next step of what you do once you find your time of what's my higher and better use? What are the things that I do that really drive the value of the business? Because it's not being a fill-in driver, or it's not helping with the finances, or it's not even selling. Everybody thinks that selling is their high value work. Some of selling is, but if you're a full-time salesperson for the business, or you're the primary salesperson, you're not living up to your full potential.
That makes good sense. And I think that's a good segue to get to HalfRetire.com. So what's the purpose of HalfRetire? What would somebody hope to gain if they got involved?
I think 3 types of people fit into the HalfRetire mold. Either, hey, I'm looking to sell my business, but holy cow, I'm only going to get 3 times earnings. I make $300,000 a year. Why would I sell this and net $600,000 or $700,000? I'll just work for 2 years more. That they have a business where the numbers don't work to sell it, but they have an age problem. At some point, you go, I can't do this when I'm 80. Second is, I don't want to retire. We're not our parents. And our parents wanted a gold watch and to sit back and drink lemonade or play golf every day. The people that are retirement age now don't want that. They want to stay active. Half retirement is a great way to ditch the work you don't like, keep the work you do like so that you can stay active mentally and physically, but keep your income, keep your full income. We teach people how to do that. And then the last is transition issues. I want my employees to have the business. I want my kids to have the business, but they're not ready. If I turn the business over to them today, it wouldn't work. They still need me. And so that's where that Picasso work comes in, right? If I can keep that Picasso work, now they can run the business because you're doing that super high impact stuff that only you can do.
So there are a lot of pieces to this. How do I know which one I should focus on?
So we have a 6-step process that we follow. And the first is you have to have a magnet, right? You have to have a reason to do it. And I think that you should look 5 years in the future. I got lots of 62-year-olds or whatever, and they're still in good health and they're still doing good. But what they're doing is work that a lot of people aren't willing to do, which is look 5 years into the future and say, hey, when I'm when I'm 68 or 70, am I going to want to put in this many hours? Am I going to want to do the work that I'm wanting to do? If I sell the business, is that going to be enough? Because let me tell you, I mean, and everyone probably will ignore me because it's not real, but I saw it with my parents. My parents should be wealthy, and they are not. They got a lot of money from the family business, and they played it too conservative. And I've seen it with people looking at HalfRetire, people who are in HalfRetire, my own parents. When your income shuts off, your mindset changes radically. Everybody thinks it won't happen to them, okay? But you start going to the restaurant and going, should we really get that $50 bottle of wine that you don't care about right now? But you're never going to have any more income. And if your assets take a hit, the market goes down 10 or 20%. All of a sudden, you are stressed about money all the time unless you have a lot of money. And so to me, the core of half retirement is income beats assets. And if you can protect that income, turn it into ownership income, equity income versus hard-earned income, that's what we do. It's a complicated process, but that's what we help people do, and it changes lives.
That sounds great, and that brings us to the final leg of this interview, which is my favorite part, our snackable solution. So why don't you go ahead and tell the audience what your snackable solution is, and let's hear it.
My snackable solution is do not settle for hard-earned income. That if you are just showing up and doing a job every day and you can't answer at 5 o'clock when you knock off or 8 o'clock when you knock off, today my business is more valuable than it was yesterday because I did this, this, and this, you have wasted a day of your life. You've made income, but that's all that you have done. And I challenge you to keep track of what you're doing and see if you can't free up some time so that you can take that business to the next level.
That's short and sweet, and that's great advice too. So it sounds like you're really into incremental improvements. Is that what you would say?
I think business owners are busy. And to say, hey, stop doing what you're doing. I have a client that called it changing the tires on a moving bus. And that's a great analogy, right? It can be done. Or you can see the airplanes where they fuel them in midair, but it's a good trick. And that's what it's like for every business owner. They're busy. And there's only so much that they can't quit their day job and turn on the fly. So what we want to do, we're business owners too. We get it. What we want to do is work with what they have and make these improvements because it's a snowball. I flat out promise people we can get 4 hours in the first month. Never failed. We've done much better than that, but everybody has 4 hours that they can carve out of their calendar. That's half a day a week. So if you've got half a day a week and you're willing to reinvest that in doing the other things that we can do, we can start a pretty positive snowball that will end up. I just got a note from a half retiree that is going in an hour and a half a week. Still keeping their income, still has a great business, etc. So you can really do some radical things. If you start going from 50 hours to 1, that's pretty good. But a lot of people would feel a lot different if they could just take Friday afternoons off and go to the movies. Or I hear working out, I'd like to go hiking, or I'd like to just be able to go to the club without feeling guilty. You can, is my point. You can do that, but you've got to do it differently than you're doing it. What you're doing isn't going to get you there.
That sounds like amazing advice, Jim. And how do people find you online?
So they can go to halfretire.com or any of our websites. But on halfretire.com, I'd recommend they download the blueprint, which is a great step-by-step process that they can follow. The shortcut, of course, there's the book, Half Retire, Keep Your Business to Stress. I can find that at Amazon or Barnes & Noble or any bookstore.
Awesome. Jim Muehlhausen from HalfRetire. Thank you so much for your very valuable advice, and we'll see you soon.
Thanks, Dennis.